Hello everyone, I'm Rod and Todd, a professional YouTuber who makes professional videos. You knew this was coming at some point, right? I've talked about my old comics twice, but here are my new comics. So, I stopped making comics after this, I'd say after the summer of, I don't know, whenever, 2016. Uh, 'Cause there were a whole bunch of different drafts for, if you remember Ultra Strikers from my old comics part 1, and there's like 50 different versions of part 2, and each one spins off in some radically different way. But none of those are ever produced. It only got like 1 or 2 pages, like 2 pages tops, before I scrapped the whole project. And I stopped making comics for several years. And then in my freshman year of high school, I decided to start making some Transformers comics. Because why not? It was called Tiny Turbo Changers, because at the time, like, if you saw my Tiny Turbo Changers video, it was uploaded around the time I was making these, and it was meant to focus on the Tiny Turbo Changers toy line, because I had my own like plot going on with those guys. They weren't representative of the movie characters; they're representative of their own separate universe. They just so happened to look like the movie characters. And so I tried to make it the cast, like the main cast was supposed to be the cast of the of Tiny Turbo Changers or whatever. But then after like 3 issues, it spun off radically from what I wanted to do. Don't ask me why. But anyway, it was supposed to focus on Optimus Prime and his team crash landing on Earth, just like the original G1 cartoon. But yeah, again, it radically spun off what I wanted to do. So anyway, let's start off with issue 1. See, it's just a group shot of Optimus, Ratchet, Evac, Dino from Dark of the Moon, the red Ferrari guy, Bumblebee, Crosshairs, and Sideswipe. Fun fact, three of the 4 characters don't make it to the end of this comic. Not this issue, but just the series in general. I'm not going to tell you which ones. You'll have to figure it out for yourself. By the way, these early issues are really short. And also, the artwork and the writing definitely gets better over time. Also, you'll note, these comics are actually in color. Yay! Yeah, I wanted these to be a huge quality improvement over what I had done in the past, so I actually added color. So anyway, it starts with Optimus Prime and Ratchet looking at damaged Cybertron. And then Prime turns to Ratchet and goes, "What have we done?" And then they're cruising in vehicle mode, and Ratchet's like, "The war wasn't your fault, Prime." And then they're back in robot mode. "But I could have done something, Ratchet." And then they're still talking. And then Prime goes, "This planet is a lost cause." And then Ratchet goes, "Well, how about you leave?" And then it cuts to like a day later. It's like, "Autobots, tomorrow I will board an Ark. And I invite you all to come with me." And then Crosshairs, who is kind of awkwardly hanging out in the corner, goes, "Yeah, I'm going. I mean, it's not like I'll miss the place." And then we cut to somewhere outside Kaon. And Starscream, Thundercracker, and Redwing are flying around. "Look, guys, I think I found them." "Thundercracker, why don't you go?" "Okay." "Skywarp, Acid Storm, anyone home?" And this is the part where I start introducing original characters. And by original characters, I mean they weren't toys yet. Of course, OneDrive isn't signed in. Sorry, if you don't know, I film these videos on on a laptop, and so it constantly is giving me notifications that OneDrive isn't signed in while I'm filming the video. Thought I mentioned that. So anyway, then Thundercracker stumbles upon the corpses of Skywarp and Acid Storm hanging. Yeah, this got dark real quick. Oh. Hello? And then here's Whirl. You know, because I like Whirl. If you read More Than Meets the Eye, you probably like Whirl too. Anyway, can't you see I'm throwing a funeral here? And yes, before you ask, I'm that Whirlbot. Wait a second, you did this. Don't interrupt the funeral. And this is a little comedic exchange. It's like, oh look, there he goes. And Thundercracker is just being shot at. It's like, the Ark, it's my only chance. Get me on the ship right now. Okay. Sideswipe, is everyone aboard? We have 7 Autobots here, Prime. Hey, got room for one more? You wouldn't be one of those Decepticons, would you? No. Autobots to your stations, about to take off. If you compare Prime this panel to this panel, you know he got a lot much lighter blue because they gave him sky blue eyes. And I realized that you couldn't see them if you colored him in all the way blue, so I colored him lighter. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know how you can see on there, but there's a Whirl standing right outside. And then it takes off. And yes, I'm aware that it looks bad. And then Whirl, it's like, I'm gonna admit. I'm gonna miss that, bots. Hey, Prime, you really need to see this. This couldn't be. Your optics aren't deceiving you. That's Grimlock. Carrying a mass murderer on board. And then Prime comes back out and he's like, what's going on here? We're under attack by an unknown spacecraft. Autobots, prepare to be boarded. And then in one of my worst gags I've ever made, Megatron goes, here's Tronny. I thought that was really funny, but it's not. Issue 2 is basically the same exact plot from the Decepticons' point of view. I think I'm going to spare you the actual plot, or the actual reading for time. But anyway, Part 2. Barricade drives up to the base and he tells Megatron that Optimus is leaving the planet. And then Blitzwing, who's based off his design for the Bumblebee movie, you know, the one that isn't Starscream. Like, if you watched the Bumblebee movie and you thought that was Starscream, no, that's Blitzwing. Anyway, so Blitzwing cuts out to Megatron's office and he's like, what is going on there? Megatron, you in here? And Megatron has gone nuts. It's like, can't you see, Blitzwing? I refuse to let another Prime escape me. Well, why not go after him? A few hours later. Is the ship fueled yet? And then Shockwave descends on one of those little lifter vehicle thingies. Like, you know, with a big bucket you stand. Not like the electric repair vehicle, you know, the line vehicle, whatever it's called, thing, or it's like the little square thing with like the bucket and just. It's like, yes, good, because we take off in an hour. And then the lifter thingy transforms into a robot named Deadlift. It's like, take a break, Deadlift. And Starscream and Redwing from the previous issue come up to Megatron and is like, so, you got room for one more? You got room for 2 more? And then Megatron's like, didn't there used to be 3 of you? Anyway, an hour later, the Decepticons aboard are Soundwave, then Shockwave, Barricade, a character original to the Tiny Turbo Changers line called Chopper, who's like a green version of Blackout from the first movie, Dropkick and Shatter from the Bumblebee movie, and that's it. Alright, Decepticons are about to take off. And then it's the Nemesis, that's the name of the ship, taking off. And then Whirl and Skylynx are looking up at the skies like, is that a Decepticon shuttle? And this is the part where I rip off, if you've ever seen this hilarious YouTube series called G1 Redone, it's where this guy does this hilarious parody dub of the original Transformers cartoon, and I ripped off the entire last scene from the first episode in this scene. So if you're watching this, was named Frederick or whatever her name is, I apologize. The Autobots prepare to be boarded. Prepare to burn, Prime. And then they fight, and then it's like, wait, who's flying the ship? It's like, great, Megatron, now we're all gonna die. And then they crash to a mountain. And even rip off the ending line for the last, for the little stinger there. Or was stinger? I don't know, whatever it is. Well, it looks like the Transformers are all dead. Or are they? To be continued. Okay, issue 3, this is where it really rapidly divulges what I wanted to do. Anyway, 10 million years later, I think it should be more like 10,000 years later. But anyway, the Ark systems get jolted online by an earthquake. And so it sends out the little probe, and it scans the alt modes of the characters. Thundercracker comes alive, resurrects Megatron, and then the others, and then Megatron, this is supposed to be kind of a meta joke. It's like, alright, everyone list off your names so I know everyone's here. And then Dropkick does his little roll call intro dump name, but then Megatron gets sick of it already and just says screw it, and they all leave. And then also I gave Megatron a truck mode, so the toy didn't turn to a jet. So that's nice. And then Optimus Prime gets resurrected, and you know that this is where the comic was supposed to end, but it didn't. Anyway, a few moments later, the Autobots roll out, and then Megatron realizes that Earth sucks. They crash land on Earth. And then Salma was like, you could just call someone and pick us up. Cut to the peaceful tyranny. You know, if you've read IDW Comics, you know where this is going. And it basically ripped off the entire scene from that one issue of More Than Meets the Eye where Tarn kills Black Shadow. So yeah, Tarn's in this comic. He's torturing Six Shot, who's a generic blackout drone instead of a actual Six Changer, which I really regret doing now. But basically, Tarn kills Six Shot, and in this one, Tarn is a solo agent. He's been going solo for years, performing his DJD duties, Decepticon Justice Division. He tortures and kills Decepticon traitors. That's his whole gimmick. And also, he's a really big Megatron loyalist, so yeah. Anyway, so he kills Six Shot, and then his I don't know what the other person aboard the ship, but he's supposed to be Lyzak from the Victory cartoon, or manga or whatever. Manga, I don't know. And he was like, call for you, sir. So the Megatron calls, Tarn's like, yeah, I'll pick you up. And then the Autobot just awkwardly walking outside, and Bumblebee's like, anyone hear that? And then Thundercracker and Chopper descend in their aerial modes, because they're flyers. And Thundercracker's like, get them above, sucker! And then Optimus has his one shall stand, one shall fall routine, and that's the end of the comic. And the little thing at the end promises the ultimate showdown next issue, but I decided to make this issue a tribute to the DJD. If by tribute, I mean random spin-off where I introduce the rest of the DJD. As I mentioned, Tarn had been a solo agent, and I was not going to introduce the DJD, but then I decided to, and I spent all of algebra in the morning sketching the models for these guys. And the cover's nice. I love it how I even put DJD over the regular Tiny Turbo logo. Anyway, so it cuts to during the Cybertronian War, where the DJD tortures and kills the Decepticon Counterpunch for being a double agent. Anyway, cut to present day, and Tarn realizes that if he wants to get Megatron, we need the rest of the team. So he breaks into a maximum security prison, Garrus 9, because of course, and he breaks out the rest of his crew, Voss, Tezzerus, Helix, and Kaon. Each one turns to a torture device. And he also kills a drone named Limbot, who's actually a real Transformers character from an actual comic that I ripped off. Did I mention I'm a nerd? Anyway, so Tarn reveals he's addicted to mods, so he always installs a mod from his victims in his body. And also you'll note that if you compare Tarn to the previous issue, he's taken Six Shot's wings and put them on him. I don't really know where you can see this, but I actually did that. I think that's kind of cool. And the intention was that, so Limbot has 4 arms and these little shoulder spikes, and the intention was to give the little shoulder spikes to Tarn, and the extra arms to Helix, because that's what Helix has in the IDW comics. Anyway, so then Prowl shows up, and he's like, how did this guy just break these guys out? It's a maximum security prison. And he realizes that they were all part of the DJD, and he gets really mad. So I gave Tarn the shoulder spikes for one panel, and then forget it. And I got rid of him, because I thought it interfered with his articulation. Anyway, so they arrive on Earth, and then Optimus is like, what's that sound? And then Megatron's just like, it's my bride. And then the ending shot is the ship, the Peaceful Tyranny, showing up over the Autobots, looming over them. Issue 5. This is the real ultimate showdown. Okay, so the DJD arrive on Earth, and then Ratchet's like, what are we going to do? And Prime's like, we fight. And also, in this scene, Tarn was supposed to be kneeling in front of Megatron, but I didn't know how to illustrate that, so he's just kind of awkwardly looking at the ground. This is the part where everyone dies. Bumblebee gets ripped in half by Tarn, jazz style, because I don't like Bumblebee. So anyway, Sideswipe and Dino are getting roughed up by Helix, and then Optimus cruises back to the Ark to get reinforcements, because he realized that if Grimlock is on board the ship, everyone else, there's a bunch of other prisoners on there. So he frees, so he frees Grimlock, Nitro Zeus, and Mohawk from the last night, and also one of the Transformers BotBots named GoobTube, who turns to a TV, because BotBots was a new thing around the time I was writing this. And so he frees those guys. Megatron has all the Autobots captured, and he's going to kill them all. And then Tezzerus begins to start executing Sideswipe. Sideswipe survives, by the way. And then the new Autobots arrive. Tezzerus gets killed by Optimus, and then Shockwave gets killed by Grimlock in the same way he got killed in Dark of the Moon. His eye gets ripped out. Oh, and then also Omega Supreme shows up, because it turns out the entire time the Ark was actually Omega Supreme. There's a little quip by Optimus, like, so that's what that switch does. And then Tarn gets stepped on and killed by Omega Supreme. And then also, I didn't know what I was going to do with Crosshairs and Evac, so I killed them. They were getting tortured by Helix, so Helix turns into like a torture device, as I mentioned earlier. And so Crosshairs and Evac are getting tortured by Helix, and then Helix gets stepped on by Omega Supreme, and so does Crosshairs and Evac at the same time. Yeah. Oh, and also, it's revealed later that the Mohawk and GoobTube died, and because I really just forgot about them, but I kind of retconned it later. And then Nitro Zeus sticks with them for a few issues, though. Anyway, so they decide to head back to Cybertron because the Decepticons retreat. But then they arrive on Cybertron and they get cornered by Decepticons. To be continued. Issue 6, they're all slaves now, I guess. They're all chained together. Anyway, so it says here several years before Megatron's takeover of Cybertron. Because the intention was he would have traveled back in time while Optimus's team was still on Earth or something. But it was never really explored. Anyway, so they arrive back on Cybertron. And then we go back to the Decepticons headquarters in the present. And also, I love it how all the characters keep talking about how Tarn's dead, and then Lyzak, for the blue one from earlier, was like, what, you think I'll miss him? Anyway, so they keep talking about Tarn, or Megatron's like, can everyone stop talking about Tarn? Anyway, so they get back to Cyber. So the Autobots are being held prisoner by the Decepticons. But then we cut back to the Decepticon headquarters, and Kaon is like, wait, those are the Autobots that we fought on Earth. We need to kill them now. And then Megatron's like, we will, but not before I kill you. And then he kills Kaon in the exact same way he died in the IDW comics, which, just read the comics, or at least go on the wiki. And Megatron's excuse was that Kaon was getting on his nerves. So anyway, then a bunch of like resistance Autobots led by RC break in, free Optimus's team. So we have RC and Cliffjumper, really. That's it. So RC and Cliffjumper show up, and then they immediately leave the Autobots. And then Grimlock, who again I had no idea what to do with, decides to go with RC and Cliffjumper. But Nitro Zeus stays behind. So anyway, Megatron sends in some drones, like the Viacons and Beast Machines, to capture them. And then Optimus realizes that if he wants to defeat Megatron, he's going to have to break back in to get Omega Supreme, because they didn't get Omega Supreme. Anyway, so then they get chased by drones, and then they run into the Wreckers. Based off the Wreckers from the Fall of Cybertron Toylands, we have Impactor, Roadbuster, Topspin and Twin Twist, and Whirl. Who, you have no idea how long these models took me to design, especially Roadbuster. Also, Whirl's in a new body, because I kind of forgot Whirl's in issue 1. Anyway, second to last issue. Impactor introduces Optimus to the Wreckers, Roadbuster, Topspin, and Twin Twist, and then Whirl. And Whirl has issues. As you can see, he's harassing Sideswipe there. Anyway, so Impactor asks Optimus what's the plan. So he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna break back in and free Omega and defeat Megatron. And Impactor just says like, okay, have fun. Because he's not going. His team doesn't show up. Anyway, so this is running gag throughout the comic, and by running gag, I mean it appeared in 2 issues, to where I took the Rumble is red, Frenzy is blue debates, which, by the way, it is Rumble is red, Frenzy is blue. Probably made a few people mad just by saying that. I took it to a whole nother level where I made it completely ambiguous as to which one was which. So anyway, Nitro Zeus, who apparently used to be Decepticon or something, so Rumble and Frenzy are guards at the door, and so he breaks in, and he just randomly asks, by the way, which one is which again? And Rumble goes, oh wait, I just revealed it. Nope, so they go, I'm the red one, and I'm the blue one. Get your facts straight. But we don't know which one is actually Rumble and which one is Frenzy. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which in this comic, so, yeah. Anyway, so they go down a dark corridor, and then it turns out it was actually a trap set by Megatron. Also, I really like this shot, which is surrounded by, like, the Viacons and Prime. I don't know why. So as it turns out, Nitro Zeus was actually a spy, and he set them up. And then Megatron kills Nitro Zeus, or Nitro, or whatever. Because, why not? And he was like, no, excuse me, I have 4 Autobots to kill. And then Impactor shows up, randomly, along with the rest of the Wreckers. And so they head back to the cell with Omega Supreme. And it turns out the reason they weren't actually they didn't come along in the first place because they were mastering the art of combining. You know, like where 5 bots combined to, or 5 or more bots combined to a bigger robot, like, you know, like Devastator, right? Anyway, so they arrive at Omega Supreme holding cell. Omega Supreme transforms some ship mode. So the Wreckers combine. We've got this really nice group shot. By the way, this is the only time the Combiner shows up at all. Voss from earlier gets completely atomized by the Combiner. His name's Ruination. And then Megatron takes this artifact called the Heart of Cybertron, puts it in himself, and becomes all-powerful. So Optimus realizes that the only way to defeat Megatron is to fly him up into space and blow the both of them up. So Optimus dies. Anyway, so the Autobots won, technically. There's one last issue, but this, I basically ripped off the entire plot from, I just recently read through the entire IDW Transformers universe, and so this is before I did that, but I ripped off the plot of the entire last issue of Optimus Prime, like the comic Optimus Prime, where Optimus was dead after sacrificing himself to destroy Unicron, and so all the Autobots are throwing a funeral for him. We get to see what everyone's doing, and I ripped off the entire plot from that. It's just trash. So I'm gonna skip this one. If you want it better, just read Optimus Prime number whatever. But it did get a sequel series. I got Matrix of Leadership, which basically, I forgot to mention this, but right before Optimus blew himself up, he gave Ratchet the Matrix. And so this basically is like after the aftermath. It's the immediate aftermath of Optimus Prime's death. So issue 1, there's a bunch of new guys, which all get introduced. So anyway, it turns out Megatron's alive. His body was destroyed, but the Heart of Cybertron thing from earlier is still alive, and his consciousness is still in there somehow. So he creates a new body for himself. Ratchet has no idea what the Matrix is, and they find a bunch of Autobots holed up at one of Megatron's prisons when they free them. So there's Lio Convoy, whose body is based on his Beast Wars Uprising toy. Jetfire and Jetstorm, based off their animated versions, and yes, they do combine. Landshark from the Wings universe. And then Node and Lug from the IDW comics. And this time, they don't get all political. Anyway, so on Cybertron's moon, the Wreckers and Omega Supreme are building a communications system. And then Megatron shows up, kills the Wreckers and Omega Supreme, but Impactor is able to radio Sideswipe right before he dies. And so it's one of those cliche, like there's too many of them, we need backup, and then the cut cells. And so the Autobots, including the new guys, go to the moon. And also, Lio Convoy has an axe. And so Impactor gets killed right in front of them. And then they get the big reveal. Galvatron, who was originally going to be based off the Cybertron body, but I made it based off the Robots in the Skies Galvatron, because I like that one more, and also the Cybertron one was really hard to draw. So the Galvatron's white and has big ear things. Oh, and I also have a letters page. I introduced that. It starred the BotBot, the Detangler, because he was supposed to detangle plot threads. Because I thought that was funny. Anyway, yeah, so it's like on Earth, Optimus freed 4 prisoners, but 2 disappeared. What happened to them? And I mentioned it's like they were killed off panel. There are plans to show their graves, but that seems cut. By cut, I mean I just didn't want to put it in. It's like the models are constantly being updated because I forgot what they look like. So basically, earlier on, Optimus Prime had rectangle feet, but I later gave him triangle feet. Did Primus and Unicron play a part in this universe? Given how I kept I said originally, no, they don't. But given how I later kept frantically trying to introduce Unicron as like a Thanos, that never happened, by the way. Despite all the setup. Anyway, Matrix Leadership Issue 2 has all the characters, whatever. So, well, it's like, well, Impactor's dead now. It's like, fools, you cannot resist Galvatron. And then Landshark's like, you wanna bet? And then, by the way, since Galvatron is like the Force, he instantly decapitates Landshark. Jetfire and Jetstorm combine into the Safeguard and then immediately get uncombined. By the way, this is the only time they combine in the entire series. And then they keep shooting him at him for a while. And then Galvatron uses his powers to rip, Ratchet's the Matrix out of Ratchet's chest, and he's like, "Oh crap, it's the Matrix," and he surrenders. So they bring him back to base, and they bring him back to Cybertron. He's stuck in a prison cell. Sideswipe goes to a bar called Jazz's. I think you know where this is going. And he meets up with Jazz, who I guess is supposed to be like an old Autobot turned bartender, kind of like, I guess, what, Blur and Swerve from the comics, the IDW comics. I just really like the IDW comics, by the way. And so Jazz tells Sideswipe all about what the Matrix is and what it does, how it creates primes. And then it's revealed that Galvatron is he broke out. That's the end. Some questions that are answered is who exactly is Tarn? Again, just Google it. My brother kept pointing out that the Ark's shape wouldn't be good for a real airplane. I'm like, it's a spaceship and it's alien technology, and even then, I don't care about real world aerodynamics. Okay, issue 3. I remember working on this one during high school biology because we were watching a movie at the time. Anyway, so Galvatron breaks a bunch of Decepticons out of jail, including Mega Zarek, who's a BotCon exclusive toy, Night Racer, also a BotCon exclusive toy, who is a fun bit of recycling. I was going to put Tailgate in the Matrix of Leadership comic thing, but he got scrapped. But then I put in Night Racer, who Night Racer got a BotCon toy, which is a redeco of a Tailgate toy, so I just reused the model. Sledge, who's like a construction vehicle guy, and then Nemesis Breaker, who's just Google it. Oh, then Rumble and Frenzy are like, hey boss, what about us? No. And then I love it how they say, this is your fault, Frenzy, but don't see which one is saying that. So, again, the ambiguity. Anyway, so they all break out. Lio Convoy gets abducted and cloned by Nemesis Convoy into the evil Galva Convoy. They fight. Sideswipe heads out, gets ambushed by Mega Zarek, and it's revealed that Mega Zarek killed Sideswipe's brother Sunstreaker. Anode and Lug get ambushed by... so Anode and Lug are staying back at base, and they get attacked by Night Racer, and Anode manages to knock out Night Racer. Meanwhile, Sledge and Galvatron are tunneling somewhere. Anyway, so all the troops are stretched thin, and that's really it. Anyway, so frequently asked questions. How did Galvatron escape? He did. What are Galvatron's powers? Telekinesis, power over metal, flight, the ability to listen in on others' conversations, and persuasion. In Galvatron's alt mode, he doesn't have one. A Node and Lug are always seen combined because of reasons. I actually had a clever explanation. I'm just not going to tell you. This is a really crap cover. Just Galvatron from the back. Anyway, so they're still tunneling. Galvatron and Sledge are still tunneling. All the characters, so Jazz comes to the rescue of Sideswipe, and then Mega Xeric blows himself up because he doesn't want to go back to prison. And then this little whip, this little exchange, is like, Sideswipe is like, that was hardcore. And Jazz is like, you want a drink? Sure. Lio Convoy kills both Galva Convoy and the Nemesis Breaker with one shot, Deadpool style. They find out Galvatron's going to the somewhere, and so Jetfire, Jetstorm, and Anode and Lug and Dino all stay on the surface, but then Ratchet, Sideswipe, and Lio Convoy decide to go follow him. Turns out that Galvatron and Sledge arrive to the core of Cybertron and are greeted by a Cybertronian named Getaway. This is not the IDW Getaway. This one isn't a jerk. It turns out there's actually a whole civilization down here where that supposedly has the Enigma of Combination stored down there. I can't just read the actual IDW comics. They explain this stuff. And so, with the help of a construction bot named Treadbolt, the Autobots go down. Sledge meets the Constructicons. Just because. Galvatron brainwashes a Decepticon, or not a Decepticon, but a guy named Storm Surge, and he never comes back. But hey, setting up a sequel. Oh, and also there's a different Starscream based off the Beast Wars 2 Starscream that Getaway trusts, and so they're talking to each other about how they don't trust Galvatron. The Autobots show up, and Getaway's mad that everyone's coming to their secret house. Getaway gets immediately killed by Galvatron, and who it turns out also has the Enigma of Combination with him now. We cut back to question mark, that's that actual caption. Optimus has no idea where he is, but then Alpha Trion, who by the way was from that issue I mentioned earlier that just ripped off that one IDW comic, Alpha Trion's there, and it's like, it's time to discuss your return. And in this scene, I decided to introduce the Scavengers. The Scavengers come back later in a fun way, but they took over the letters page for the rest of the comic. Like, who are you guys? Croc, Fulcrum, Spinister, Flywheels, Crankcase, and Misfire. Autobot or Decepticon? Doesn't matter. And then really though, who are you guys? This interview is over. Okay, second to last issue. And we're 32 minutes in. There's still way too many comics here. Okay, Autobot base. Night Racer is back and she's holding Lug captive. Anode has a gun and Night Racer's the shoot me through her thing. And then Lug gets shot in the head and then dies. Anode gets really mad and is like, I will kill Night Racer. Because Night Racer escapes, by the way. And this is originally supposed to show Optimus Prime like going through all these different trials, but I said screw it because I don't know how to actually illustrate that. So anyway, Optimus comes back because Megatron gives him the Star Saber. Or not Megatron, Alpha Trion gives him the Star Saber. And so Ratchet and Sides are about to die, but then Optimus comes back, and it's a new body too. Complete with the shoulder speakers. It's basically Generation 2 Laser Optimus Prime. That's what the body was based off of. He kills Galvatron using the combined power of the Enigma of Combination, Matrix, and Star Saber. Galvatron dies, and then they all roll out. Oh, and by the way, they leave the Enigma with the other Starscream. I'm gonna skip the FAQ at this point. I don't really care. Last issue. It's only like 2 pages long. Basically, it takes an entire page to tell everyone who has died over the course of the series. I'm gonna skip that. They're in Jazz's bar, discussing the events of the series, or whatever. And then Node is off on her own. She kills Night Racer in revenge. And then Optimus leaves the Matrix with Ratchet. Ratchet becomes Ratchet Prime. And then they all roll out. Dang. By the way, there's 2 more comics I want to discuss. Okay, so I made 2 one-shots. I just recently made this one. And originally, as I said, I was trying to shoehorn Unicron into it. So this one heavily sets up the Unicron thing, but that hasn't happened yet, so whatever. Anyway, the new records. Because in Tiny Turbo Changer's lore, I made Goldbug, who was the Bumblebee movie Bumblebee, Hot Rod, Hound, Drift, and Ironhide the records. And also, this is supposed to be a node, but then I said I had other plans for nodes. This is a new character named Sprocket. So they jump from an airplane. Since I didn't like the way Goldbug looks, he immediately gets shot. And it turns out Sledge and a bunch of others, and all the Decepticons from the original Tiny Turbo Changers series, are staging a riot, as well as a Decepticon named Devcon, who's that big quadruped guy from Dark of the Moon. Oh, and yes, Hot Rod says I'll stop the time. Hound miniguns shatter. Ironhide gets is being hassled by a Soundwave. Drift stab Soundwave. But then Ironhide's leg gets blown off, and Drift takes him to safety. Sledge gets captured, and Dropkick and Devcon escape. And Ratchet rewards Hot Rod, Hound, Drift, and Ironhide with his thanks. And then he comes back to Dreadwind and Darkwing, who are like, Unicron's coming, baby. And also Primal War coming soon, because it was supposed to be an Infinity War ripoff. I have no idea if that's even happening anymore. And then there's definitely my favorite so far, the Scavengers, based off the IDW Scavengers. As I mentioned, they already took over the letters page. There's a nice little meta joke. It begins in a building with a sign labeled the Tangler. It's supposed to be the news building. So they come out, it's like, well, that was fun, now what? And so they have a call from a guy named Agonizer, who's also he's a big part of the Scavengers in the comics. And so, Agonizer tells them to steal the Magnificence, also kind of related to the Scavengers in the comics. And so he says they'll pay them $50 billion apiece if they do it. So they agree. It's one of those cliche heist things where where they discuss the plan while they're carrying out the plan. So they go in through the roof, incapacitate the guards, and then Sinister will pick the lock, and then they'll try and get out. And then Grimlock shows up, but originally they were going to knock out Grimlock and take him with him, just like the IDW comics. But that didn't happen, instead he's just knocked out by a blast from flywheels. So they escape, come back. Turns out that Agonizer didn't have the money to pay them in the first place, so they leave. The next day, they break back in, so they can rob him of whatever money he has. So they leave again after stealing his money. They discuss on a rooftop how they have $2 million now, and that should be able to carry them for a while. Sinister goes down to the cops and leaves a tip saying that Agonizer was the one who broke in and stole the Magnificence. And that was also supposed to be the ending. By the way, this thing had 2 scrapped endings. Ending 1 was supposed to be him asking the Magnificence what was going on, and he would say Unicron's coming, and that was supposed to be the end. But I cut that, and then it was supposed to end with Sinister leaving the note to the cops. And that also ended. Or that was also scrapped. So anyway, then the next morning, they buy a spaceship named the Weak Anthropic Principle from Swindle, which is one of the World Sweepers in ADW comics. It's the big Decepticon symbol that flies. Anyway, so they leave the planet, and he's like, we could do whatever we want now. And that's it. The Scavengers will return, though. There's a note. It's like a Marvel movie. Anyway, then there's a nice little Meet the Scavengers page at the end. Croc, leader, tries to remain under the radar. Hates his giant shoulder wings, because the model gave him these big things. Misfire, skeptic, previously known as Fly High. Terrible aim. Fulcrum, engineer, cowardly ex-suicide bomber, turns to a disarmed explosive. Sinister, he's a Blackout clone, because I thought it was clever. I make him a Blackout, the helicopter bot from the first Transformers movie. And so for pretty much every helicopter Decepticon, I reused the model for Blackout. And I thought I was being really clever. Of course, I realized that I made a Blackout Cybertronian mode, and thus all the clones Cybertronian modes, because I gave them separate Cybertronian modes. Oh gosh, I made one of the like the Seeker Tetrajet thingies from the first from the original Transformers cartoon, and so he's called Spinister, but he really doesn't have any helicopter blades. Anyway, so he's a wannabe surgeon, very forgetful and easily distracted. Crankcase, Trigger Con with an inferiority complex. Large head wound doesn't help. Flywheels, Duocon with the ability to assume tank and jet forms. Always feels like he would be the first one to die. And in the original IDW verse, he is the first one to die. Anyway, so those are my Transformers comics. There are a lot more comics I want to talk about, but this video has gone on far long enough. Thank you for all sitting through this. I'm going to do a part 2 here pretty soon. So, thank you for watching. Please like the video, subscribe if you're new, and this has been Ron Todd signing off.